Hello. Sorry, I'm a minute or two late. I was making my children lunch. Anyway, hello. We are back. We have done this once before because this is period 3. So, you guys, we went through the types of agriculture on YouTube Live. Again, I'm not going to be looking at this screen so much. I'll go back and forth to see if there's any comments. It seems like this is mostly me recording this lesson because people are going back to it later on, clicking on the stream and watching it. But again, I have to go live because if anybody wants any information real time, any questions about stuff real time, I have to be available to do that. And I don't mind recording these things. So it's pretty cool. This is the first time you guys are my period 3, so I always do everything with you first. That's usually the way it works. This is the first time I'm doing the new lesson. By the time I get to the 9th period, it's kind of boring. So at least I enjoy doing it with you guys. So what I'm doing, what you should be doing, you should have looked at the materials, which is the slides and it's the exit ticket, whatever we call it, the quiz, the DOL, the exit ticket, whatever. But the slides is where you're focusing mostly because at the end of the slides, there's a guided practice and there are 3 links to 3 articles. So we'll talk about that. I am going to go through the slides. So what you should have up is your slides ready to go so you can follow along. And sort of, I'm going to break down each slide and sort of talk about it. All right, so here we go. I'm on slide 5. I just skip over the reviews from the previous day and I go right to slide 5, which is the objectives. And after this lesson, you should know what the Green Revolution is, and you should be able to understand the significance of the Green Revolution to land and water use. I'll get into that in a second. So as we move through the slides, on slide 6 is, that's just examining graphs from a different lesson. Skip over slide 6. When we get to slide 7, what impact did the Green Revolution have? Okay, so you have to know what the Green Revolution was. The Green Revolution doesn't have anything to do with what we consider always green nowadays. It's not like organic green Earth Day. That's going green. That's not what we're talking about. Back in the 60s, they had this thing called the Green Revolution where new varieties of wheat and rice were developed. Okay. And these new, what's up, Grants? These new hybrid varieties had higher yields and more resistant to diseases. So in the 60s, they started messing around with the crops of wheat and rice, and they tried to make a better breed of food. And what they did was they came up with these hybrid varieties that had much higher yields, meaning they could get way more of it per season than they used to be able to do. And it was also more resistant to pest diseases, which was also beneficial. India alone experienced double the rice production during the 60s after they figured out these new ways to hybrid variety. And we'll talk more about that in a second. Mexico experienced an 8-fold increase in wheat production. So over the 60s, our food production increased dramatically. That's the point of this slide. So when you go to slide 8, you're looking at the first graph. So here's the graph. World grain production, grains meaning corn, wheat, rice. World grain production increased by nearly 200% over a 20-year period. That's kind of crazy. And then it says, amazingly, all this took place without increasing the area of farmland. So what that means is we were getting more efficient. We weren't taking up more and more land and making bigger and bigger farms. We were still using the same amount of land, but we were actually finding new and better and more efficient ways to grow food on that land. So our food production, boom, up 200% in 20 years or so. And we didn't have to use more land. We didn't have to cut down trees. We didn't have to find more areas to farm in. So that's pretty cool. It's kind of like when you think of Green Revolution, think of like Industrial Revolution in history, right? Industrial Revolution is when railroads and car production and assembly lines and all that stuff. Well, the Green Revolution is when farmers started to find better ways to, and scientists found better ways to grow food. Right? So that was, I'm on slide 9 now, that was referred to as the Green Revolution. So the Green Revolution took place in the 60s, and it was when farmers, scientists found new ways to get better varieties of corn and wheat and faster growing for more yields. in the same amount of space. Right, so that's kind of what the green revolution was. I feel like these slides go backwards a little bit, but that's okay. We're on slide 10 now. What impact did the green revolution have? So here's another graph, and if you're looking at the graph, you'll see that the grain per person, so how much an average person consumes over however much it was per year or whatever it is, the average amount of grains, rices, and wheats that an average person eats didn't go up, stayed the same for those 20 years or whatever it is, 50 years. Never really went up at all. I mean, up and down little fluctuations, but at the end of that 50 years, it's pretty much still the same. So what that says is we're eating the same amount of grains at this time. We're not increasing our grain consumption. We're not decreasing it. We're eating the same amount per year per person on average. But when you look at the other line, the blue line, you see the grain production. The grain production started low and went high. So that's because of the green revolution. So what, again, you see happening is we're making a buttload of food. We're making tons more food. We're not using more space. And it's not because humans are eating less of it, so we just have it. We're actually producing more food per year, so which was a very good thing, especially through the 50s and 60s and 70s. So I'm on slide 11 now. What impact did the green revolution have? Okay, so while production increased dramatically, grain per person only slightly increased. This is sort of explaining the graph slide right before it. It also says other methods of increasing food production have also been used. The new crop variants have higher yields, but often require higher water and nutrients. Now they are at their limits. Okay, so see, this slide is backwards. Let me go look here. All right, I'll get back to slide 11. I'm going to slide 12 now. So the green revolution, you know the definition of it, but how the heck did they get more varieties, right? How did they get more varieties of food? How did they get the food to grow faster? How did they make these hybrid varieties, right? What they did was this was achieved by natural plant breeding. So we're talking about natural plant breeding coupled with fertilizers and irrigation. That's on slide 12. What that means is farmers would breed stronger seeds so they could grow the strong ones, right? We do this with horse racing. They breed the stronger horses together to make superior offspring. Same thing with plants. What they would do was they would take the seeds of the plants that grew fast, the plants that, because, you know, all the corn and the wheat and the rice, they all have their own seeds, and in their seeds is their own DNA. So even though they're the same species like humans, their DNA is just a little bit different. So we would take, the farmers and scientists would take the stronger ones, the corn that grew the highest, the wheat that grew the longest into winter, and the wheat or the rice that wasn't susceptible to a disease. So they took the seeds of these superior plants and they planted them the next year, and they planted them the next year, and they planted them the next year. And eventually what happened is they have these fields full of the superior DNA. It's almost like purebred dogs when you think about it, right? Horse racing. There's always talk about humans. When we can modify humans, can we do that, right? But it's almost like if two strong athletes with good DNA for athletics have an offspring, that offspring is tended to be, genetically speaking, athletically inclined. And if that kept going, this is how you have strains and lines of more superior things, right? So this was a natural way to do it, natural plant breeding. They didn't do anything crazy. They coupled it with fertilizers and irrigation, meaning they used more fertilizer, which tended to be a bad thing, what we found out later in the 80s. And that was about it. They, water, this and that. So that's how they did it. Back to slide 11. We know that it produced dramatically. Other methods of increasing food production have also been used. New crop variants have higher yields, but often require higher water. Okay, so what happened is eventually this hit the limit. So you can naturally breed for as long, back on slide 12 just for a second. You naturally breed, and you get the superior breed of corn and the superior breed of wheat and rice and all that stuff. But there's only so far you can go. You can't keep going, right? So we got to a point where we said, okay, we can do this. It's done, but this is how much we're getting. We know the population is increasing, so we need more and more food anyway. So what happens at the bottom of slide 12, you see today another route is being pursued, which is a little more controversial. Dun, dun, dun. So when you go to the next slide, it's guided practice. And you will see that it's not really a web quest. It's actually a few articles, which I'll click on and show you. The Green Revolution Impact and GMOs, genetically modified organisms. So when you start talking about fruit that's bigger and fruit that's shinier and fruit that has more juice in it and more nutrients in it, right? The Green Revolution in the 60s was the way that the farmers did that naturally. Then science comes in, farming comes in, agriculture, and they say, all right, well, let's try genetically modifying these things in a lab. Let's try genetically modifying the DNA of these seeds to make them even better, right? So they try to do that somewhere, I think in China or something, or Japan. The main staple, the main starch is rice, but that doesn't have a lot of protein in it. So there was a lot of protein deficiency across that country. And what they did was they genetically modified rice to have protein in it, which was interesting. And there's a lot of controversy to GMOs, and I think everybody knows that. We don't know what messing with the DNA of another organism can do. We don't know if that's dangerous to us consuming that. We just have no idea, right? So that's where we're going with that. The way I look at the Green Revolution and the GMOs when I think about it, the Green Revolution went as far as it could go naturally. So I think of like weightlifters, right? I had a friend in high school, and he weightlift and weightlift and weightlift, and he looked really good, and he was all cut up. But he got to a point where natural was natural. He wasn't really going to get much bigger, right? He did as much as he could, and then he wanted to be a bodybuilder. That's what he wanted to do. So what he did was what a lot of bodybuilders do, stupidly. He started to take steroids, and that was kind of like that would be where he moved into that whole GMO side, if we're using an analogy, where all of a sudden he used steroids and he went whoop, and he got bigger, right? So that's kind of what happened. Green Revolution. We're breeding, we're getting as good as we can, we're getting as good as we can. Should be good enough. Anybody that looked like my friend in high school would be totally happy. But there's always someone that wants to push a limit. There's always someone that wants to get better. There's always someone that wants to grow more food. There's always someone that wants to make more money. So boom, GMOs come in and say, okay, maybe we can genetically modify them to be better. So that's what we're looking at. When you go to slide 14, you will see 3 links in the speaker notes section. Those 3 links bring you to 3 articles. Those are 3 articles that have to do with genetically modified organisms and how science is trying to do that. Maybe some benefits, maybe some cons. You need to skim over those and look over those articles, right? I wanted to be that. That's all I wanted you guys to have to do today, because it's a lot of reading. There was, of course, the exit ticket, which is 2 simple questions about the slides, which you can answer and turn in. But the links to the articles, read those articles. What you're going to have to do for an assessment is you're going to have to pick a side. So whatever you call that in language arts, what do you call that? A persuasive essay? I don't know what you call it. But you're going to have to decide for GMOs, against GMOs, and then you're going to have to write a couple paragraphs to support using evidence, non-copy and pasted. But of course, you can use sources for that. You're not doing that today. The only thing I want you to do is understand what the Green Revolution was. I want you to read these 3 articles about GMOs, and we will reconvene when I see you on Monday. Monday, I will have probably a writing assignment for you, just to give you a heads up, and it will probably be on the GMOs. So that is all I got to say right now. I'm going to go. If you need anything, I have that shared document that I check. It's not working out great. I also have private messaging. Please private message me. Even if you have to leave something publicly underneath these links. I get email notification that you've sent the private message, so that makes life good. I have posted another grade for some of the work that you guys have done. If you have any issues, please get in contact with me. I am putting in the grades from the test that you guys took recently. So that should be good to go as well. All right, people, I'm going to go. I will talk to you later. Have a wonderful day. Try to relax. Hopefully this whole schedule is chilling and making it a little bit easier for you. I'm getting bored. Everyone's getting bored. Try to find something fun to do. I'll talk to you soon.